And so now it's changed from, you see it's no longer says KCVG, it says 18 right. Next step, to get rid of these flight plan discontinuities, those come in basically whenever you change something and you've got two different steps, it'll put that discontinuity in between. To get rid of that, you hit clear, and then you upload it to that line. I've got my flight plan here that I made with FS build that I'm going to plug in. Basically, you type in each waypoint and upload it where you'd like it to be inserted. And then it'll recalculate each time you input a waypoint. So those are our first two waypoints. You see, it figured we're going to hit 370 just before we get to DJB. Now the next waypoint, well, the next series of waypoints are on an airway, and so instead of typing all of them in, you can just input the airway and the last waypoint along the airway. To do that, you pick the waypoint that you start on the airway along, pick the airway option, and then you type in the name of it. J29 is the airway we're following. Then the waypoint 2, JHW. And then we're following J70 from there to LVZ. And then you hit insert there. So now we have up to the top of the star in our flight plan. So it starts 18 right. You know how I was talking about before, the transition altitudes where it figures your optimal altitude goes up and tells you that you should climb. That's what that S/C is. And see, it goes from 370 to 390, and at that, when we reach that point in the flight, it would pipe up and say, hey, you need to climb, and we'd contact ATC. Now you can see right now it's dumping us off at LVZ to JFK. So what we're going to do is, normally you wouldn't pick your arrival runway while you're still at the departure airport, but for the sake of explanation, we're going to do that now. Let's say we'll use 13 left, and for our star, we're using Lendy 5, and we're not using a transition. So we're going to click insert, and it inserts, but we got a whole bunch of discontinuities. So the first thing we want to do is delete, since we've got LVZ in here twice, or Lima Victor Zulu. I know I should be using the aviation, but yeah, and so we're just going to delete all of these extra lines until we've got a nice clean flight plan. Because, KJFK there in the middle doesn't make sense. And the discontinuity there. And then there's going to be one more after the transition from the star into the approach. It's going to have another discontinuity, so we need to get rid of that one as well. And so now we have our flight plan is complete all the way from our departure runway down to the holding pattern that we would go to if for some reason we had to go around at the destination airport. So yeah, we've got the flight plan entered. Now the next thing to do is to enter your takeoff data. Start off with the slope and wind. The slope is always 0. All runways in Flight Sim are flat and dry, so they put that in there for realism, but it's always 0. And the wind, that is the headwind component. So say we're taking off from 35 right and there's an 8-knot wind out of the north, and you'd put in 8 knots. There's no wind today, we'll say. So we're going to upload 00 to there. OAT is outer air temperature. It's 66 degrees Fahrenheit out today. So we're going to put in 66F. It needs to know either Fahrenheit or Celsius. And that's important because the outer air temperature impacts your plane's, it impacts the engine performance. You can't run the engines as hard when it's hot out. So And that's also this flex option here. I don't use it very often, but basically what that is if you are at a lighter gross weight and you want to limit, you don't want to use absolute full takeoff thrust. You would enter a higher outer air temperature here than the actual outer air temperature, and what that will do is stop the auto throttles from engaging maximum thrust, and it'll bring it back a little bit. But that's optional, and I don't usually mess with it. Flaps, I usually use 15.0. You can, with higher gross weights, you would use more. That's something that you can change per flight. It's, depends on the flight. And then when you enter the flap data, when you enter how much flaps you're going to use, you need to go over here to your dial-a-flap wheel and make sure that that is the same as whatever you input into the FMS. So for us, that's 15 degrees of flaps. Next thing to do, it wants you to check your V speeds. I'm not going to explain what V speeds are, but you need to confirm them by clicking the key next to each one. And now your flight plan is initialized. That is, you're ready to proceed through the rest of your checklists and take off. So that's the basic pre-flight for the FMS. There's a couple other things I wanted to go over though, and that's the direct to page. Sometimes air traffic control will clear you direct to a waypoint, and when that means is not return to your planned flight path and then fly to the waypoint. It means fly directly from where you are right now to that waypoint. And the way you do that is, like, say that we got cleared direct to Delta Juliet Bravo. We would go to our direct intercept page, click the key next to DJB, and then click the line next to it again. And now our flight plan has been changed. It's been modified to go direct. That is the next waypoint on the list, and the autopilot would then fly directly to that waypoint. I guess the only other thing I wanted to look at was the shortcut menus. These shortcuts are awesome. It's one of the big advantages of this over the PMDG 747, I believe. The pushback is pretty obvious. Be careful about how far you put in here. I've been pushed back into the grass on more than one occasion on accident. The cabin doors, there's a little bit of trickiness to them. When you just hitting close here is not enough. If you see, look, all the doors are closed. They take a couple of seconds to close, but you can see I've still got a door open warning here. And that is because I didn't arm all of the doors. So if you click this arm all button, and it should come up and say either not all doors could be armed or all doors are armed, like that did. And now that door open is still there because we've got some cargo doors open. But cargo doors do not need to be armed, but cabin doors do. So if we close all of our doors, now as they close, like I said, they take a couple seconds to close, these warnings should go away. You can see. And now there's no door open warning anymore. Ground connections, there is external power that we used, and also external air, which you can use to start the engines with external air. But that's pretty uncommon in the real world as far as I'm aware, because it's expensive. So you usually use the APU unless there's something wrong. And we already covered refueling. So that's pretty much all I'm going to cover today. From here you would just go through your regular checklists and proceed to take off. Those checklists can be found in the manuals that were included with the airplane. If I got anything wrong or left anything out, please let me know. Thank you very much.